Every part of the United Kingdom is now in lockdown, with people being urged to stay at home as the scale of the public health emergency becomes even more daunting.
The English Football League had agreed to suspend all matches.
There were Zoom calls. So many Zoom calls. Jack, are you okay? Is he hungover again? This guy, fam, it's 11 a.m. It was a time where me being a slob and not leaving my bedroom was socially acceptable, and where Corona was nothing but your dad's fourth choice of beer. Son, just get me the fucking bottle. Dad, please, all I want is your love and affection. Give it to me now. Lockdown had happened and stadiums were empty again. But lockdown football created some of the most ridiculous scorelines, some of the most mysterious storylines, and some of the most outright ridiculous football that the world has ever seen. A combination of zero fans and extreme sanitation provided new storylines and heroes. But what exactly made lockdown football so mental? So it's 2020. A pandemic is sweeping across the globe and the UK is shut down. UK residents are using up more toilet roll than the morning after an average curry night. Jack Grealish is back putting suspicious instruments up his nose.
Oh, wow.
Flights are grounded and we've all got to stay 2 meters apart. Life was bizarre. Life was strange. Life was like nothing we've ever seen before. And yet still, none of that was any weirder than lockdown football. We had Bruno Fernandes scoring a penalty for Manchester United after the game had even ended. How are you winning the match against Brighton after I've got the notification that the football match has ended? This was the level of Manchester United's penalty terrorism during that era. They should have got a new badge whilst they were at it, to be honest with you. VAR was not taken too kindly to the Seagulls in this situation.
I hope Brighton get relegated.
Because honestly, the combination of VAR and lockdown football, Jesus Christ, they basically lost on appeal in this situation. They must have been fuming getting back to the changing rooms here and they've got to go back out and save a penalty. And that was just scratching the surface of the stupidity and results here. There were no fans in stadiums when Tottenham beat Manchester United 6-1. Well, that's a result that could probably still happen, to be honest with you. But on the same week as that, Aston Villa beat Liverpool 7-2. And truthfully, I've still not recovered from the result now. I wanted a hit operation on Adrian that day. I was ready to dial 0800 FBI and get that man a one-way ticket to the gulag. 7 goals conceded, bruv. This was before Aston Villa were even properly good as well, by the way. Poor Adrian waking up at 8 the next morning. He thought another goal had gone in. Fuck! Yo, sorry. Yo, was that Watkins again? Oh, baby, it's time to go to training. This might have seen a world record for deflected goals, by the way. A Liverpool era where we saw Nat Phillips and Reece Williams at the back. What a centre-back partnership. Reece Williams, bless him, was getting a hero's welcome when he returned for year 13 duty after holding it down in the Champions League.
A child. No.
And speaking of the Champions League, if you thought 7 was bad, Barcelona held 8 to Bayern Munich. Fun fact, Barcelona were supposed to be a professional football club during this time. This was the start of the bankrupt era, by the way. Lionel Messi deciding that the time was over.
So we don't have the capacity.
Do you understand how mad it is for the players to be on furlough? This isn't what the government meant, ladies and gentlemen, when they said to work from home. Barca players, you still had to actually go into the office. Jordy, can you please just mark Thomas Muller if possible? Brother, I can't hear what you're saying. I said mark. They've scored again. Forget about it, bro. Philippe Coutinho scored against his parent club whilst on loan from Barcelona. That's not even allowed most of the time. But they forgot those documents existed because they were distracted by lockdown. And honestly, Catalan journalists were not holding back on the rest of Messi's squad when interviewing him at full time.
Just all you need is some players to play with. I know you can't say that, but I'm saying it. I just think you need more quality around you.
European football was ridiculous. PSG even got to a final, for God's sake. They lost it, yes, but they got there. And they were beaten by a former PSG youth graduate, yes, but Kylian Mbappe was looking very different on that day, I've got to say.
Are your trousers all right? They're still intact.
COVID Champions League final PSG, not their usual threat, I've got to say. The Champions League results were crazy. The Premier League results were crazy. Man City held 5 to Leicester. How times change, man, honestly. Have you got Jamie Vardy nutting on Pep Guardiola at the Etihad?
Fuck.
West Brom scored 5 goals against Chelsea. I didn't even know West Brom could do that. Now, we'll come back to the foolishness, the ridiculous moments, right? But let's get more nostalgic, because there was some serious lockdown NHS heroes. Like, I'm talking, on a Thursday night, we were clapping for Anthony Martial, bruv. Black Lives Matter Anthony Martial was like we've never seen before. I don't know what was in this guy's vaccine, but it changed him completely. The end of the 2019-2020 season, I want to say, was like the peak of it. I think it carried on, and obviously the latter season there was delayed because of the 3-month break that we had. Following on from that, stadiums were obviously only partially allowed to reopen. A lot of clubs lost out on a lot of money in terms of gate receipts. Grants had to be handed out to keep lower league clubs afloat. It was an absolute shit show. There was a lot going on, but Anthony Martial held it down all the way through. Another one, West Ham, Jesse Lingard. He was ready to prove Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the rest of Manchester United wrong throughout their entire 6-month loan spell. Then he decided to go to Nottingham Forest instead, and he completely fucked it. Danny Ceballos at Arsenal for that 3-month period was like Kevin De Bruyne reincarnated. Honourable mentions, all right, to my fallen COVID soldiers. I'm talking Tariq Lamptey, when the extremely small man looked like the best right back in the league. Mateus Pereira at West Brom looked like a baller, got relegated, thought he was gonna come, he went to Saudi Arabia. Goosefat Adama Traore was going absolutely mental, slipping and sliding down the touchline, ready to be cooked at fan temperatures of 180 degrees on a Sunday afternoon. Who could forget goal-scoring midfield maestros like Joe Willock, Thomas Suchet, Sam Johnston turned into prime Neuer, Anwar El Ghazi got double figures, James Justin was cold, that's unlocked a whole new memory, and up top, Patrick Bamford scoring goals for fun. Dominic Calvert-Lewin got turned into prime Hernan Crespo, mate, and all under the guidance of Carlo Ancelotti and James Rodriguez at Everton, mate. How the fuck did we allow that to happen? Ancelotti went from up the toffees to winning the Champions League with Real Madrid in his first season. I don't know how they managed to get such a prestigious manager at that point in time, but I just know for facts he was handing out gum day one as soon as he smelt the breath of the local UK residents. He absolutely 100% sold James Rodriguez a dream, and we were so bored in lockdown that we genuinely thought he might have been a woman. The conspiracies during that time period were sensational. Who was your star of lockdown football? Teams, players wise? Let me know down in the comment section. And whilst you're at it, slap a like on the video. I might sound like I'm just reminiscing, getting nostalgic, but the title race was crazy too. The Kazoo sponsored title race, Aston Villa and Everton were going crazy. Southampton were like top of the league in November, but there was a fair share of foolishness as well. Like BT Sport expecting us to pay £15 to watch Fulham versus Sheffield United. The Premier League would have never been worse than me having to pay extra money to listen to Michael Owen on a Saturday. And I understood the premise, you know, we couldn't go into stadiums to actually watch games, so the equivalent was, you know, paying for the ticket, I guess, to watch it on pay-per-view. But that was definitely BT Sport testing the waters to see whether fan bases would be okay with paying extra money for big matches like on Super Sunday. And I'm glad there was pushback, honestly, especially from Sheffield United fans, because nowadays that's about £1 for every goal they're conceding in a match. Speaking of the TV coverage, and Tyrone Mings was going into VR, Arsenal coaches couldn't bear to watch the football they were seeing out on the pitch. Mesut Ozil simply did not care. You had Lamella scoring Rabona goals. Sheffield United looked like they could get into the Champions League until the pandemic happened, and then they were just completely dusted. Alisson scored a goal against West Brom, but the most shambolic thing of it all, some of the trims. Barbers, of course, weren't open. You know, you couldn't go and get a haircut, and that led to some disastrous results out on the pitch. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's hairline went a further 15 years back in time. N'Golo Kante decided to try and actually grow some hair. Lockdown, for some reason, had Jadon Sancho thinking that he couldn't shave his beard as well. It's okay, bro, like, you can do that, don't worry. Sadio Mane's looked like his hadn't finished installing. It was pandemonium, guys, honestly. And it even saw perhaps one of the most maddest occurrences you could ever see in the Premier League era. Liverpool winning the league. And this was crazy, Liverpool as well. Our points record at times during this run, ridiculous. We were like 20 points clear in February. The league was wrapped up. It was completely done. Obviously, there was a point at which people thought that it might just get called off completely, the entire Premier League. Thankfully, it didn't. Thankfully, it did restart, and we claimed our first Premier League title of the modern era. It saw Jordan Henderson and co celebrating in front of absolutely nobody. There was absolutely no order whatsoever. Heroes and incredible incredible performances from players that you would have never expected to see the likes from. And every single human on earth tuning in to watch the Bundesliga when it was the first league to restart. But what exactly made lockdown football so mental? Because yes, we get stupid results now. We get surprises now. You know, no one expected Aston Villa to be genuinely fighting for Champions League spots at the start of the year. No one expected Chelsea to spend £1 billion and barely be able to break into the top half of the table for 2 years in a row. But they're things that we can still look at and kind of explain to a degree, whether it be good or bad transfer recruitment. Some of the things that were happening in lockdown football during, you know, Project Restart and stuff were just plain stupid. There was no logic to any of them. And I think obviously the main first thing has got to be the lack of fans. You know, supporters not being there. It basically, you ended up with every single game being like a glorified training match. You could hear managers down on the touchline. You could hear player shouts. It basically completely neutralized the home advantage. Any teams that relied slightly more on maybe having a bit of a home advantage struggled. I think Sheffield United were really riding high on the fact that their fans were behind them. They were massively overachieving. I mean, they looked nailed on to finish in the Europa League that year. Then as soon as the break happens, they lose all their momentum. They go on a shocking run, and then the next campaign, they get relegated bottom. It meant there were kind of crazy momentum swings during games, and also teams didn't feel too intimidated, as I mentioned, going to an opponent's ground. And then another thing that I don't ever see get talked about was the inconsistency of availability. If you're, you know, Tottenham, for example, yeah, and you've just had COVID just run through your team, yeah, you've now got to put out a completely different lineup to what you did 2 weeks ago. The schedule was all over the gaff. We were playing at different times of the year, and now most teams were barely ever able to put out an unchanged 11 because of someone somewhere needing to isolate or games just getting postponed all over the gaff. There was absolutely no stability whatsoever, and I think that just led to a lack of stability in terms of the results too. But at the very least, it was mental. Let's just hope we never get it again. That, though, is going to wrap up today's video, and I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, feel free to slap a like on the video, and of course, subscribe if you are new to the channel. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @officialfng on Twitter and on Insta. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.